All right. Hi, my name is Greg Cassidy, and I recently received my Golden Spike Award. This clinic is going to be about the long road to achieving the Golden Spike Award and working towards other AP program certificates. And this is my first NMRA clinic, so I'm a little bit nervous. Also, if you have any questions, feel free to just pop in with them. Who, what, why, where, and when. The 5 W's are a checklist of questions used in journalism and research. Some of these will be answered, and if we're lucky, maybe all of them. What is the Golden Spike Award? In its simplest form, it's an NMRA Achievement Program Award. Here's a list of the requirements. For rolling stock and motive power, you need to display 6 pieces, either scratch-built or super-detailed kits. For model railroad setting, which includes structures and scenery, you need to have a minimum of 8 square feet or modules, including scenery, and at least 5 structures, either scratch-built or super-detailed kits. And for engineering, that's the track part. You need to show 3 types of track, such as turnouts, crossings, crossovers, or the like. It has to be ballasted and installed on roadbed. Pretty much everything you would see on a layout or a module. Why am I doing this clinic? Well, if you're talking about the award, we'll get into that in a bit. If you're talking about the clinic, I was asked to do it. I was told, we have learned that people are interested in our journeys, the story of where we started, the process in the middle, and the final product. Personally, I think that was a lot of hooey just to get me to do the clinic, but I said, sure, why not? When and where? Well, right here and right now. I'm going to be speaking about myself, something that I don't do often. But I need to in order to talk about what led up to my getting the Golden Spike Award and why it meant so much to me. Now, I know I'm likely to be preaching to the choir. My wife is in the choir, and she says they never listen to the preacher. Probably many of you in this group know more about what I'll be covering than I do. That's okay. Hopefully, I won't put you to sleep. But this clinic should be available later as well, and my hope is that someone will get something out of it. And now the who. Well, this is me a few years ago. Aren't I cute? As a kid, I had an HO model railroad. I wish I could remember a lot more about it, but I was just a kid at the time. It was something my dad and I had set up either on a sheet of plywood or a ping pong table. But the one thing I remember about it was I had a Renwall house of fire. I loved that thing. The smoke that would come out of it, the water you could pump, who wouldn't? I don't remember anything about the locomotives, but I remember that Renwall house of fire. But after a few years of playing with that, I moved on to building plastic models, mostly cars and ships and more cars. I built those all the way through junior high school until real cars came along. And closely after those came motorcycles. Once I was out of high school, the draw of motorcycles was too strong, and I ended up racing them. About that same time, I fell in love and got married. And my wife and I traveled all around the country for 12 years, with me racing on the club circuit. During this time was when I got my first taste of awards. They came in all forms, such as trophies, plaques, and every now and then a little bit of money. The main draw to racing motorcycles was the speed in the competition. But I have to say, racking up the awards also felt nice. Now for a little sidebar. If you look it up on psychology websites, awards can make people feel valued, appreciated, and accomplished, which can fulfill basic human needs. And I won't read all the fine print here, but suffice it to say there's a reason people give out awards and a reason we enjoy receiving them, and it's all about validation and affirmation. And also at that time in my life, when I was able to have some free time at home, I found a developing interest in buildings, especially old ones. If I'd gone on to college, I like to think that's something I might have studied, and this interest will come into play a little later. Now, once the family started growing, racing and traveling had to come to an end. We had spent all that time not really thinking about kids, but once they entered the picture, just like every other mom and pop, we wanted to be involved with them. Our son had started showing an interest in trains, so when he was 5, of course, there was one under the Christmas tree. That interest grew, so by the next year, he had an HO train set. Together, we built a little platform for it and got a couple of buildings, and he had his first layout. Maybe I should say we had our first layout. As our interest in railroading grew, my son and I took our family along on a number of train rides. We spent more and more time enjoying them, while my wife and daughter tolerated them. As we spent more time on my son's layout, it was getting filled up with more track and buildings. He was having the most fun running the trains and deciding where buildings should go, but I was having the most fun working on the layout. Well, I came to the conclusion that if I wanted to keep building more of a layout, I needed to build my own. So that became my next project. I cleared out a part of our rec room and started working on a track plan. I had already spent some time going through track planning books and found something that would fit in my space. I was going to modify it some, though, by adding a bridge and a yard on one end. It wasn't particularly big, but the track plan ended up working to my advantage, as you'll see later. I had read all about building benchwork. I found that Lynn Westcott's How to Build Model Railroad Benchwork, describing his L girder, made sense to me. So that's what I ended up using in my plans. As I was developing the wiring plan for my layout, I had to deal with hooking up the electric turnouts as well as wiring the track. This was 1994, so my initial plan was to wire it as DC. But digital command control was just coming onto the scene. So in the middle of wiring it, I converted over and made it so I could run the layout using either method. In roughly a year's time, I had all the track and switches in place. I had my DCC wiring installed and had gotten a Digitrax control system. And I was starting to put down the basic landforms that come before scenery. By this time, I had also joined the NMRA, thinking that this would help me in my modeling. In making the landforms, I had used both cardboard strips with hardshell and insulating foam, which was just starting to be used at this time. I did one end of the layout using one method and the other end using the other method to try and find what both of their pros and cons were. Near the end of the second year, the layout was starting to look finished. I had the backdrop done and much of the scenery put in place. I was adding details along with having fun running trains. In the middle of building the layout, I had come across a local club called the Maryland Central Model Railroad Club, and I was fortunate enough to join them. We had a medium-sized public display layout in the basement of a church nearby. This club just happened to have 2 of Maryland's master model railroaders in it at the time, plus many other excellent modelers. Since I was in the middle of building my layout when I joined them, I picked up lots of tips that helped me as I was completing my layout. But then, as my layout was nearing completion and I was spending more time down at the club layout, it all came to an end in 2001 as the church changed and we had to move out. If any of you have ever taken down a layout, you know the feeling that goes with that. And about this time in my life, I had a slight diversion that took me away from model railroad again for a little while, and it may have coincided with the loss of the club layout. I had picked up what ultimately ended up becoming another race vehicle, and the pull of going back to the racetrack was too strong. While I wasn't racing near as often as when I was younger, it still seemed to take all of my time. I credit this to cars being a lot more difficult to work on and me being a lot older and a little slower. But I had found that my fondness of receiving awards had not diminished any. They didn't come near as often as before, but that made each one just a little bit sweeter. But after 10 years of that, the budget for keeping the car on the track was getting out of hand, and working on the car constantly was becoming a pain in the back. So it was a good time to retire from the racetrack for a second time. And I had still kept my toe in model railroading by staying involved in the club and keeping my layout and workbench in a state of hiatus during that time. And as I transitioned back into model railroading full-time, I started looking at what I had enjoyed doing the most from building the layout. From the bench work, the track laying, the electric wiring, to the landscaping and the building of rail cars, I found that building structures was what I had enjoyed the most in the whole process. That also applied to the club layout when it was in place. I realized that in all the work I had done on it, I had enjoyed building structures for it the most. I looked at my layout and decided there were places where I could put in more structures and details. So I started getting busy at making structures for it, including craftsman-style kits. And I believe this is where my latent interest in building architecture was starting to come into play. If there was a new kit that I saw and I thought there could be a place on the layout where I could put it, I would go ahead and build it. But that meant that the open spaces on the layout were filling up fast, and there weren't very many more areas that I could build structures for. But I kept building structures just because I enjoyed it. That meant, of course, that I was going to have to start putting them on shelves. But I found a way around that once I had friends asking if I could build something for them. I thought this was great because someone else would be buying the kit and I'd get the enjoyment of building it. This led to the beginning of a client list of people that I regularly build for. And an unexpected perk was discovering that I could receive more awards for what I enjoyed doing. By entering models and dioramas into county fairs and popular votes at divisional meetings, I was able to come home with some more awards. While all of this was going on, along came the pandemic. With that came the explosion of Zoom meetings, which our club started utilizing right away. I also came across a weekly Zoom meeting put on by New Tracks Modeling, which is hosted by Jim Kello, MMR. I got involved in that show and made a number of friends around the country by meeting with them weekly. One of these new friends was fairly local to me and someone most of you may know, Martin Breckville. This led to me getting more interested in the Potomac Division, which I had known about from when I was more involved in the NMRA while building my layout, but hadn't really interacted with other than getting some newsletters back in the 90s. And that led me to getting to know Matt Thompson and Lee Stormer as well. And since Martin and Lee would often show up at our weekly club Zoom meetings, Lee thought it would be a good idea to have Matt Thompson give a clinic on the AP program. Other than knowing a little bit about how one became an MMR, this was my first introduction to the details of the different AP certificates. Matt had also done this presentation for the South Mountain Division, and it may be accessible on their line. Not long after this introduction to the AP program, Matt was planning to move south to that haven of model railroaders known as Williamsburg. And who else but Martin was stepping in to fill his shoes? That worked out well for me because I had his email on speed dial. That meant I could pester him with all the questions I wanted about the AP program, and he took it all in stride, being the ever-patient civil servant that he is. So I decided at this time to take my first plunge into getting an AP certificate. Now, with my love for building structures, I thought that master builder structures would be the most sensible one to first concentrate on. And it just so happened that at that time I had finished up a couple of buildings for clients that had quite a bit of extra detail. And before they would be shipped away, I asked Martin if he could come and evaluate them. So with a lion's share of courage, he crossed the river and showed up along with Alex Belita to evaluate a couple of my models. While they were here, I mentioned that I had seen on the NMRA website the availability of a Golden Spike Award, but I didn't know much about it. I told them that I had looked at what I had already done, and it might be something that I could apply for. And now we're finally back to the Golden Spike Award. After they looked at my layout, I asked them if I should fill out the form, to which they resoundingly said yes. So let's take another look at the qualifications checklist of the Golden Spike Award. First is rolling stock, motive power, and cars. They require you to display 6 units of rolling stock, either scratch-built, craftsman kits, or super detailed commercial kits. I had plenty of cars and locomotives, many of them super detailed. The one thing I'm not sure of is if you really need a locomotive. The requirement just says to display 6 units of rolling stock, but I imagine that's a question for somebody higher up than myself. Next is the model railroad setting, structures and scenery. They require you to construct a minimum of 8 square feet of model railroad or modules, including scenery, and construct 5 structures, either scratch-built, craftsman kits, or super detailed commercial kits. If it's a module that has less than 5 structures, additional structures separate from the scene may be used. I had plenty of buildings and most of my scenery completed, so everything met that requirement. And third is the engineering, civil and electrical. For this, you need 3 types of track, such as turnout, crossings, crossovers, and all the track must be ballasted and installed on roadbed. All of the installed track must be properly wired so that 2 trains can be operated at the same time, and you have to provide one additional electrical feature, such as a power-operated turnout, signaling, lighted buildings, etc. And even with my somewhat simplistic track plan, all of this played out to my advantage. Now, looking at my track plan, I had the turnouts, the crossings, and the crossovers pretty well covered. For turnouts, I had 22 of them, all electrically powered. For the crossing, I had 2 of those, and they had been scratch-built. And for the crossovers, I also had 2 of those, although only one is readily apparent. Now, if you read the requirements on the Golden Spike Award webpage, you'll find that they can be actually simpler than that. Part 1 mentions that display just means that. They don't have to earn any points, just be more than something you would put together right out of the box. In fact, they can be displayed on a table by your layout, meaning that they don't all have to be the same scale. Part 2 mentions that the layout or module doesn't have to be elaborate, just more than a sheet of plywood that's had track nailed to it. It also reminds you that for structures, they don't have to just be buildings. Bridges and trestles count, and with a little painting or weathering, they would qualify. Part 3 is the best part in terms of making it simple, I think. First, it says the 3 types of track sounds harder than it is. You can, of course, use commercial track, so you can use commercial turnouts or crossings. It even says that a grade elevation is a type of track. Yeah. And note that the 3 types don't have to be different. For example, having 3 turnouts will qualify. As for having 2 trains operate, it says a simple siding where one train can pull in while another goes by works. It really couldn't be any easier. So I filled out the form, and I will tell you, I didn't know it at the time, but that is one of the easiest of the NMRA forms to fill out. You just have to check a few boxes. It's that easy. And in lightning speed at the next divisional meeting in Waldorf, I was very pleased to be given my Golden Spike Award. To me, it felt like a great accomplishment because I had been recognized for something that I created on a larger scale than I had ever imagined. Now, I'll be the first one to admit that I was very lucky in this regard. Everything that I had done to build my layout just happened to fall within the categories that the Golden Spike Award was created for. And it's not that any of the qualifications to achieve it are particularly difficult. I was just lucky that all the work I had already done matched the qualifications. As I started finding out later, the Golden Spike Award is much easier to achieve than any of its related AP certificates that it's based upon, such as structures, scenery, rolling stock, or civil engineering. And this is, of course, as it should be, since the Golden Spike Award is not to show that you've mastered any one category, but that you've shown sufficient proficiency in a number of them. Whereas the Associated Achievement Program certificates are to show that you've actually become a master of that category. Now, how many in this group know all about the Golden Spike Award? I think of it as NMRA's best kept secret, and I'll show you why. When I was looking at the AP categories, I didn't see the Golden Spike Award at first. While it has its own web page, there's no link to that page from the AP main page. You can find it, but it's not right there in front of you. The only thing on the Achievement Program page is a download for the application form. Now, how do you start the process of getting the Golden Spike Award? The first thing is to download that application form. On the NMRA website, you first navigate to the Achievement Program tab and then scroll down to the Golden Spike Award link. Clicking on the link will download the application form. Or you can just Google NMRA Golden Spike Award, and that'll take you straight to the Golden Spike web page. Now, one item of note. If you've already received Master Model Railroader status, you cannot apply for the Golden Spike Award. My thoughts on the Golden Spike Award are as follows. It can be relatively easy to achieve, especially if you've already built a layout. In my case, it was just a matter of filling in the paperwork after having it evaluated. And also, in my case, it was the carrot that got me really revved up on trying to accomplish some other AP program certificates. While I had been looking at the Master Builder Structure certificate, I wasn't sure if it was something I could accomplish. I had just decided to have a couple of my models evaluated before they were out of reach in case I wanted to continue with it. But the Golden Spike Award made me feel even more accomplished and that I could do more in terms of other AP certificates. And at this time, I had already submitted 2 other Statement of Qualifications, both for Master Builder Structures and Model Railroad Author, and they both were quite a bit of work. For the Structures AP, it wasn't that it was difficult, I just had to put in more work. I had already built plenty of craftsman kits that were highly detailed and earned merit awards. But you're also required to have 6 scratch-built structures, and I had only built 2 that qualified as scratch-built under the NMRA definition. So it was time to get busy and build 4 more structures from scratch, which I did. And I want to take this time to mention how much AP coordinators are willing to go out of their way to help the rest of us. One of the models that I had scratch built for a client was in Williamsburg on his layout. So I got in touch with Chuck Davis, who was the AP coordinator for the Tidewater Division, and asked if it would be possible for him to go evaluate it if I sent the paperwork down to him. And he was very accommodating, and even though it wasn't nearby, he worked it into his schedule, and once it was evaluated, he sent the paperwork back up to me. But for the author AP, that was actually more work than I thought it was going to be. Let's just say I'm not an author by nature. I don't like writing, I'm not very good at writing, and I don't usually have a lot to say. But one thing that had helped me in that category was I had done a fair bit of online work, such as presenting build-alongs on Zoom shows. And once that was factored in, and I found that I might be already halfway there, it just took writing a number of articles to get me well on the way. What really helped in this was watching the Potomac Division Clinic number 3, which you can find on their YouTube website, and there's a link to them from the Potomac Division website. In this clinic, Alex presents what it takes to get an NMRA Author AP certificate. And one of the back and forth discussions between him and Martin after the clinic had concluded was enough to make me feel that I could accomplish this if I just put my fear of writing behind me. Again, I won't read all the fine print, but basically Martin says that this is one of the easiest AP certificates to get in his opinion. Everything is sitting there waiting for you, and the outlets are ready to accept your content. Alex responds that while a lot of people feel uncertain about expressing themselves and may have a hard time writing, and it may be easier for them to hand lace switches, that should not be a hindrance. They are both happy to help someone get articles into the Flyer and other publications. And they were both a tremendous help to this struggling author as I was working towards that certificate. They both encouraged me and answered all of the stupid questions that I had, at least as far as they could. With the online world changing as fast as it does, there's a little bit of uncertainty as far as what will qualify in this category. It's almost one of those, let's send it in and see if it flies situations. Now, before the division meeting a couple weeks ago, where I was first giving this clinic live, I had heard there was a certificate coming my way, but I didn't know which one. I was honored to be awarded my Certificate of Achievement for Author at the meeting. It's now framed in my train room next to my Golden Spike Award. And another one is supposed to be on its way. I did notice that the first question on the NMRA website of frequently asked questions about AP certificates is, what is the status of my statement of qualification? I guess that's a common question. I've continued to keep busy after applying for those 2 certificates. I'm always working on 1 or 2 structures, usually for a client or a friend, and if I'm lucky, I get to squeeze in one for myself. My client list has grown to where I need an Excel spreadsheet to keep track of who I'm working for and what's up next. I keep my YouTube channel up to date with videos of everything that I build. I've been posting those up since 2019 and have developed a small following. I really am pleased when I see someone with a comment saying they learned something from a tip or a technique that I was showing, or that they never thought of doing something like that, but now feel that it's something they'd like to try. And of course, I'm still involved in the Model Railroad Club, which has now, through a merger, transitioned to be known as the Rockville Model Railroad Society. I've held every officer position in that club except treasurer, which I have no interest in doing. And while we're still looking for a permanent home, we do have a layout that's on public display in the Silver Spring B&O station that we maintain. And in addition to our weekly Zoom meetings, we'll often get together at members' houses to operate on their railroad. And as our club is a 501c3, one of our biggest achievements is our scholarship program that is now in its 3rd year. We've just concluded the 2024 program, and with 5 applicants, we have selected a winner to award a $2,500 scholarship to. We've also set up a donation program on Ziffy where the full donation goes to the nonprofit. And others have asked me if I'm working towards my master model railroader. All I can tell them is I don't know. I'm enjoying working towards the certificates that I want, and will feel very accomplished for each one of those that I get. I'm actually working on a third and a fourth one right now for electrical engineering and scenery. So that was my long road to achieving the Golden Spike Award. And while achieving that wasn't actually very long, in the end, it's led to a lifetime of working towards more achievements. And what more can you ask for from an award? Oh, there you go.
Thank you, Greg. You
Well, I hope no one fell asleep.
Wide awake, wide awake. Once again, good job. But now we got you recorded. We didn't catch that in the meetup at Arcola, but now we've got it there, and we'll put it up on YouTube within the next couple of days. Anybody
Right,
have
and
any
just like
questions?
Alex's clinic from 3 years ago, I hope a couple years down the road, maybe somebody will get something out of this.
I do know that our YouTube site does have a lot of activity. We do get a lot of people coming in to look at things, and I think that's great that we have that presence out there, and it's strong for the division to do that. Anybody have any questions of Greg? He's the expert today.
Well, like I said, I'm preaching to the choir here. I know all of you are familiar with it, but it's good to go through it again. And frankly, as familiar as I thought I was, it wasn't until I started reading some of that smaller print on the Golden Spike Award website where I realized 3 turnouts would count as 3 track types.
And I'm suspicious
the
that
more you dig into it, the more you find out about it.
Yeah, and you probably got a lot of work done towards scenery and civil, I suspect, probably more than you think you do.
Well, that's where I'm heading next. This summer, I have a plan to finish the scenery on my layout, which I had always called finished, but looking at it again with a evaluator's eye, I've said, no, it's not finished. And then I'm going to apply for that. And the electrical, I think if I can figure out how to do electrical diagrams, which I know I did years ago, but that was years ago, that's something that I can work towards.
Well, if it would help you with that, I can provide you a link to get to mine. Mine are on my website, and in fact, the package that I submitted for that AP is on the website. That might be something to give you some ideas. And everything
Okay,
done
yeah,
on there
shoot
was
that over
done
to me.
in,
And I know there was a clinic a few months ago about that as well. And that's something that I'll be reviewing more than once.
all my diagrams are done with Word, so they're simple, and you don't have to have any CAD or any of that stuff. It's I try to do things as simple, stupid, so I can do them. That's the bottom line. Jim, you got anything to say there? I see you're unmuted.
One thing that occurs to me looking at this is that maybe I'm being a little paranoid, but as an N scaler, I think you're at a little bit of a disadvantage in terms of things like Craftsman car kits and stuff like that. They pretty much don't exist. And when you're an N, almost every piece of rolling stock comes out of the box and goes on your layout. There's not a lot of detail parts you can add. There are some. I'm got a couple of locomotives that I may modify slightly or something like that. But I just, as far as rolling stock and Craftsman kits, I mean, when back years and years ago in HO, I remember building Ambroid kits and stuff like that, and they were great. They were wood and, stuck together with glue that, made your head go crazy. But but you don't see that in N. N is, like I say, pretty
But
much,
you know what, Jim,
out of the box.
I can put you at ease because one of those almost fine print things that I read on the Golden Spike webpage talks about how just sometimes decaling, painting, or weathering can actually qualify as work put towards the car.
Okay. Well,
Now,
that's
if
certainly done enough of that.
yeah, I mean, you know, the best scenario would be to get an undecorated one and paint and decal.
Yeah,
But
which
even if,
I've done, and I've got more waiting.
yeah, but even maybe taking one out of a box and doing a good weathering job on it could qualify, because they do talk about painting and weathering as being some of the work that you can put on both structures and cars in terms of qualifying towards it.
What
It's
about
basically they don't want the stuff just taken out of the box and put on track.
right? Oh, I'm sure that's, yeah, I understand that, and that's why I say almost everything in N scale is you
Yeah,
take it
I
out of
know
the
what
box,
you
you put
mean.
it
Our
on the
club
track.
has an N scale layout, and
You know, good
we
luck
just
trying to
pop them
find
out of
N
the
scale
boxes
kits
onto the
like,
track.
you know, there's no AccuRail N scale kits, you know. What about like something like hardwiring decoders into you know, DCC ready locomotives? Would that count?
I don't know. I mean, it would obviously count in terms of being able to run two trains.
Oh yeah,
Yeah,
that's a
but
good.
it's as far as detailing,
The track
I mean,
work,
it
the
would to
running
me, in
multiple
the amount
trains.
of
That's
work that goes into it.
yeah,
You may just have to pop off the shell and see, that's what I did.
yeah, yeah.
Um,
Okay.
but
Well,
I'm sure
it's.
Ernie and Martin could probably answer that better.
I went to one regional convention. I'm in Florida. Used to be part of MER, but I'm not anymore. But when I left, they graciously said, "Would you like to stay on our website or our email list?" And I said, "Yeah, absolutely." But anyhow, I went to a regional convention, and somebody had at a club had 25 members get their Golden Spike Awards in under a year.
Wow.
Again, using the same principles that you're talking about, the simplicity of it,
Mhm.
the ability to mix and match. It doesn't have to all come from the railroad you're working on right
Right.
now. It could come from your past. It could come from a club.
Yeah, that's it. Working on a club layout gives you so many opportunities to work towards so many AP certificates. I mean, because you could work towards a golden spike just if you said, okay, see this section, I built this. And of course the club members would go, yes, we blame him for that. But if it qualifies, then that would get you your golden spike. But you can also get stuff such as dispatching and some of the electrical or anything else if you're working on a club layout.
Yeah.
I wish I had all of the time that I used to dispatch on our club layout back in the 90s written down.
Documentation is everything.
It
It's
sure is,
very
but
true.
back then, I didn't know, and that's all history now. So,
Jim, I think
Well,
that Greg could probably relate to this also, the fact that when you're working through these programs, through these certificates, having others working at the same time, taking 10 people, and as an example, the car behind me is a car that was number 5 that I built, scratch built, and that was built from the plans of an Android kit that you explained. I just duplicated the wood parts, and that's HO, yes. But if you could find an Android kit that might have been N or something like that, I mean, I bought the kit for $5 at a joint convention or joint minicon we had between Chesapeake and Potomac. But those plans were HO plans, and it made it very easy for me to build that. And if I can do it, doggone, I know you can do it. It's simpler, and I think sometimes it's like anything new. You're hesitant to get into it, but once you get into it, it helps. And if you have others that you're working with, when I started my MMR in 2002, there were 10 of us that started, and as time marched on, some guys fell off the track. But I think there's now 4. And I think possibly the 5th one might be getting somewhere. He just submitted 3 more cars, and that's all he needs is 1 car to get a merit, and he's got it. But the ability to ask those friends questions, them be your peers, them being your being honest with you, that really is great, or that really stinks. You need to hear both sides, and I think the encouragement and just as a team, it's important. And I had 3 good friends that I guess it was in 2021 or 22. I got into the cars, and they just kept there was once a week they got together at one of the houses, and they worked their way through it, and they got through it together.
Mm.
You know, but taking their time, and I had to learn to take your time, because as I say, I'm a very good rough carpenter. I can rough carpentry everything, but you want final carpentry or finished carpentry, it takes me time and it's painful for me. And it's like, decaling is a simple process, but being able to put decals on sometimes isn't quite so simple. When you start trying to get the sheet down, it just don't go down right, and everything's starting to dry out on you.
It's like anything. It's simple when it works right.
Well, the bottom line is you build one, then you build a second, you build a third. And if you're building cars, basically every car is a flat car. You're just making a change to it to make it a different type of car, whether it's going to be a gondola or a box or whatever, but they're all flat cars in the beginning, if you will. I guess you could say a locomotive is a flat car. It's just you put a motor in it and make it go, you know. But
that's why so many box cabs qualify.
Yeah.
And Jim, keep in mind, they don't all have to be the same scale. You could take a couple of N scale cars, maybe do a nice weathering or paint job or something on them, and then have a couple other HO scale cars that are displayed like it says. They don't have to be displayed on the layout. So they don't all have to be N scale just because that might be the track that you're showing.
Okay.
Or changing grab rails or changing ladders, that kind of thing. You know, it's something that you added, that you designed. And you know, I don't know if you're there, but you know, there are people 3D printing these things now. And 3D printing has made a lot of changes where the parts you couldn't find, now you can find parts or get parts made to satisfy those other requirements, such as, you know, brake parts underneath and such. And I mean, I know myself with the cars portion of it, and Martin can speak to this. You learn all about braking systems. And when I started out with my, I had a wooden tank car that, well, I put an AB brake system on it, and that tank car went back to the 1860s, and AB brakes weren't out. Those were K brakes. And that was one of that Matt Thompson told me. He said, you got the wrong brake system. You got to change that. And I didn't know there was a difference. And I learned a lot about it. And I found a book on brake systems, and there it was. And I was able to learn about that, and that helped me. And that's really what this whole thing, you know, in starting with the Golden Spike, and that gets you an introduction to the judges and what it's all about. And beyond that, it's just learning your way through and step by step. And if you don't build something, you don't know how to build it. And Greg, I think you can probably say it's your first structure you built probably wasn't the greatest structure, but if you compared it to what you build today, it's probably, you know, 10,000 times better, I suspect.
I'm not even sure well, I know my first one probably would have been one of those I put on my son's layout. No, I must have built something for my layout when I was a kid, but that was too far back.
Too many moons have passed, as I say.
Yeah.
Yes.